We are now live on YouTube.
Okay, hi guys. How come my video is not working? It's working. Okay, so who do we have tonight? Where's my cheat sheets? I'm sorry. I'm multitasking right now.
Yeah, we can tell.
Yeah. All right. There it is. All right. Who's coming tonight? Do we have a quorum? Brian's here. Is Jen coming?
I did not hear back from her. I don't think she is. Terry said he might come late.
Okay. All right. Let's get going then. Okay. So I'm going to call to order. The Finance Committee meeting of the Park District Highland Park is called to order on Thursday, May 20th, 2021 at 4:02 p.m. Roxanne, can you please call the roll?
Commissioner Bernstein,
Here.
Commissioner Kaplan,
Here.
President Ruttenberg.
I am here, thank you.
We have a quorum. Next item on the agenda is public comments for items on the agenda. Anyone wishing to speak will need to use the raise hand function on Zoom to indicate that they would like to speak. The board secretary will call on registrants who have activated the raise hand feature in alphabetical order. Executive Director Rome, is there anyone from the public attending this meeting who wishes to speak and provide public comment?
Nope, nobody is in attendance currently.
All right, thank you. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the Finance Committee meeting minutes from April 8th, 2021 and April 22nd, 2021. Has everyone had an opportunity to review them?
Yes, I think they're fine.
Okay, that's fine. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the Finance Committee meeting minutes from April 8th and April 22nd, 2021.
So moved. I second.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, there was a motion by Commissioner Kaplan, seconded by President Ruttenberg. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it, the motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the 2020 audit summary by Skitch, Director Peters to present, and she will introduce our auditor, Dan Berg.
Yes, very good. So we've been having lots of fun with our esteemed partner from Sickage, Mr. Dan Berg, and he is going to give you some highlights of our comprehensive annual financial report, as well as the communication to the board. And so, Dan, I'll turn it over to you, and you should be able to share your screen too.
Okay, we'll start. I hope we're starting with comprehensive annual financial report and the lovely picture on the cover.
Yeah, perfect.
All right. So I bookmarked a few pages in this document for my purposes, but also for yours. So if you'd like to follow along with the hard copy or your own PDF, please let me know. I will shout out the page numbers on both, or either or neither, however you want me to do it.
Everybody does have we did send everyone a copy of the annual report, but
okay, on a PDF, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Yes.
Okay. Then, well, I didn't know if you printed them out and handed them out or anything.
No.
Okay. So I'll just jump right in and flip pages. So the first page I wanted to talk about was the 10th page of the PDF. This is the transmittal letter. I know you're all familiar with comprehensive annual financial reports, but I did want to direct the board's attention to two things. First of all, the transmittal letter, which is written by staff and gives a nice introduction, but also the date. The date is basically the day that Mary Lynn sent it to us. However, this date will change because we're using current IMRF information within this document, and IMRF hasn't released their audit yet. So the auditors haven't opined on the census data or on the actuarial data, let alone the financials of IMRF. And in the past, the auditors have found problems with one or the other or both of those. So those numbers were subject to change 2 years ago. And we had to go back and reissue a few reports. So if you want, we tell our clients, if you want to use current IMRF information, let's wait until we have the auditors sign off on those numbers. So that board meeting that the IMRF board is scheduled to release or accept their audit is May 28th this year. So right before Memorial Day. Last year, they waited until the Monday or Tuesday after to post everything to their website. We're told this year they're close to being ready, and that might be on the 28th. If that's the case, then we'll send out the representation letter to Mary Lynn and Brian, and we can run with it all. But we can't date these until IMRF. So that's why you'll see all the dates highlighted in this report. Okay. The independent auditors report on the 15th page of the PDF. This are the 3 pages that are truly ours. The rest of the report is drawn from representations of management of the district and are technically the district's financial statements and not ours. So the independent auditors report are the only 3 pages in the report that are ours. And on the top of the 2nd page, the 16th page of the PDF, is our opinion. It is what is commonly referred to as a clean opinion. We call it an unmodified opinion. It's the best opinion we're allowed to give, and it's the opinion that you've become accustomed to receiving in your audits. So with that, we'll go to the 18th page of the PDF, and that's the management discussion and analysis. As you know, this is the part of the report where the management is allowed and encouraged to analyze where you've been, where you're going, and what changes occurred from this year to last year. Everything is comparative to the prior year, and it tells the whys of the increases in net position and the increases in fund balance. With that, we'll jump to the statement of net position, the full accrual financial statement of the district.
Could I interrupt for a second and go back?
Absolutely.
Would you just
Certainly.
go back to the prior page for 1 second?
Sure.
The first bullet point is 3605,686.
Mm-hmm.
And the second bullet point is 3605,683.
Good call.
Wow. Barney, that's good.
I just wanted to say I paid some attention.
That's good. Now we have.
And actually, it should be 687. So we'll make sure that correction gets made.
Thank you.
Oops, it's easier to do it this way. Sorry. There we go. Cool. All right. Anything else on that page?
No, I couldn't understand the rest of it, so.
Okay. Well, I'll try and explain it to you then. This is the statement of net position, the full accrual. So it does include the net pension asset, which is the net overfunding of the IMRF, and capital assets, net of depreciation, the IMRF deferred inflows, outflows, the non-current liabilities, which will include your bonds payable and your net pension liability, as well as your OPEB liabilities, deferred inflows and outflows, and finally the net position. I always try to direct the attention to the net position and explain that it's in the order that you cannot spend it. So the net investment of capital assets represents the capital assets that we saw at the top of the page, minus any debt outstanding that was used to purchase or to construct those assets. So that's your investment in your physical plant, in your physical assets that you can't spend. So the next is the restricted for, That means you taxed for specific purposes and you're legally bound to use the money that you have on hand at year end for these purposes, special rec and debt service. Everything else could be spent. So this is available for use, $21 million. On the next page, the statement of activities, we'll see that the change in net position of $3.6 million increased your net position. So if your constituents were to ask you whether you're better off economically this year than you were the year before, this is the number you'd point to. Okay. Last year, you had an increase of just under 3 million. So pretty impressive in a year that year of a pandemic that you're able to increase your net position. Now, everything else in the report will be on a modified accrual basis, which focuses on current assets and current liabilities and does not include any long-term liabilities or assets. So this won't include any fixed assets or bonds payable or the IMRF liabilities. Focusing again on the equity section of the page, the fund balances, we show that some of your funds have already been spent and is the form of assets like prepaids and inventory. So it's not available to be spent again, non-spendable. Then there's your restrictions, so legal restrictions for which you can only spend the money on special rec, etc. And then committed. Committed means that the board has dictated that these monies be spent on this purpose. And we focus on the rec fund there primarily, showing that the fees that are collected for rec and taxed for recreation are to be spent on recreation. Make sense? The last two are assigned, and that's the capital project funds, assigned for capital projects. That represents monies transferred in or interest earned on capital projects. 3.4 million is restricted because those are unspent bond proceeds. So they're legally restricted to that spending. Finally, you have the unassigned in the general fund of $4 million. So focusing next on the change in fund balance, the first column is general and the second column is rec. So I can't keep, I guess I could make it smaller, but then would defeat the purpose of it. So each of these funds had a significant excess of revenues over expenditures at year end before transfers out. General fund of 3.4 million and rec of nearly 2.2 million. The transfers out were to the debt service and capital project funds totaling about $2.5 million. And after those transfers, we still had a net change positive of 750,000 for general and just over $250,000 for the rec. So each of these fund balances grew in spite of the pandemic, in spite of the district not collecting nearly as much in fees as it's accustomed to because the programs weren't running. We like to compare these to the expenditures for which they're being used for, okay? So we have, let's see, 12 months worth, virtually 12 months of expenditures, 11 months worth of expenditures and fund balance for the general fund, and about 6 months for the rec. And we would compare these not to the total, but to the available, these numbers here, the 4.5 million here and the 4.9 million here, not because these monies are already spent. Does that make sense? Okay. These are the smaller funds or the debt service and capital projects. We had over $4 million in expenditures for capital projects this year, issued nearly $6.5 million worth of bonds, had transfers in again from general and rec and some from special rec as well. Debt service, generally you want to have that as a break-even fund. So this is not concerning to have $158,000 decrease in fund balance. as long as the fund balance doesn't go too far negative. And as a result of not quite spending all of your bond proceeds so far, and the transfers in, the capital project fund increased fund balance by 4 million and now has, as of 12/31, 11.4 million available for future capital projects. This last column is non-major. It's basically the special recreation fund. Has increased its fund balance by nearly $500,000 to $800,000, and it only had $350,000 worth of expenditures. So I'm thinking that some of that will be spent on the current capital projects for handicapped accessibility. So just a guess, am I right on that?
You know, we actually had purchased a building, the cooperative at SSRA had purchased a building, and we were supposed to have to pay for that in 2020. And it got deferred to 2021. We already paid that.
Okay.
In February.
So the first concern is that it has more than 2 years worth of expenditures and fund balance. So that's not the case. So
no, yeah, we already paid over $300,000 this year.
So I was going to warn, if you didn't do that, you might be subject to tax protest.
And we did reduce the levy there as well. We did not tax the full 4%.
Okay. I do have a number of park districts that when they had the chance to increase their tax levies a few years back, they started doing that. Now they have too much money in special rec and they're running out of ways to spend it because pretty much most of their stuff is handicapped accessible. The next page I wanted to direct your attention to is the 58th page of the PDF, which is the budget to actual page for the general fund. And I always think that these tell an interesting story in that the revenues were only $300,000 under budget. Most of that was in property taxes, and $300,000 worth of property taxes was actually received after February 28th. We have a 60-day limit on recognition of property taxes received after year end, so we did not recognize March and April receipts for property taxes as revenue. Those will be revenues next year. So I'm guessing you'll be over budget on your property taxes next year.
Mm-hmm.
Expenditures, as would be expected because of the actions the board and the district took during the pandemic, are $1.4 million under budget. And after the transfer out, the general fund actually finished over $1 million ahead of what was anticipated at the beginning of the year or was budgeted for. For the rec fund, the revenues, this is the 59th page of the PDF, the revenues were under budget by $4.5 million. And as you would expect, most of that is in charges for services, these three areas right here, exactly as you would expect. However, the expenditures here were $3.8 million under budget because of the reduction in staffing and programming during the pandemic. The original budget called for a transfer out of nearly $3.5 million. The district chose to cut that by $1.5 million in order to preserve fund balance. And there's your increase, finishing $900,000 ahead of budget. The only other couple of pages I want to talk about would be the Imrf funding. We do have actuarial numbers for 2020, and the funding level now turned the net pension asset to $9.5 million, and you now have 120% funding. So I'm expecting your rates to continue to decrease. We can look, I know we talked about this a little last year on the 60th page of the PDF. The funding went in 2015, continues to decrease in 2019 to 73,000, went back up substantially, but is still below the 2015 level. I'm expecting this to go down a little bit in the coming year. The capital project fund, thought you might like to see the budget to actual here. The capital outlay was underspent by 3.5 million. The transfers in, and again, a little under the budgeted transfer in. And the increase was substantially more than what was budgeted for. But finished $1.8 million ahead of budget. The only other pages I wanted to direct your attention to are in the stats section, and just make you aware that as an auditor, as an accountant, and as a citizen, this is one of the places I think, besides the MD&A, is most interesting to me. I did want to mention that the audit went really, really well. We did it remotely this year. Last year we were on site. This year, mostly remote. I know we had come out just to look at a few invoices and whatnot. And that's pretty much it. But 90% of the hours put in were done from our homes or offices, home offices, as opposed to being on site. We want to thank staff, Mary Lynn, Connie, Scott, you name it, for just doing an outstanding job getting ready for us and being responsive to our requests for information, for documents, for questions. As you'll see in the board communication, we don't really have much to report to you or see needs for improvements. Yep, that's pretty much it. So if there's any questions or if there's any pages you'd like me to talk about, I'd be happy to do so.
All right, thanks, Dan. I'll go down the line. President Ruttenberg, I'll let you lead off.
Oh, thank you. Well, first of all, I think we should all be quite proud of our Mary Lynn and her staff for what they were able to do and what they've consistently done. So a round of applause, but we won't do that. Is there any reason why, given our overfunding at the pension fund, that we should reduce our funding? So
the interesting thing with Imrf is they tell you what your rate should be. Your rate, 2020, 4%, which is exceptionally low, but they're gonna, you know, tell you actuarially what it's gonna take to stay at 100%. So there's not much you can do about it other than inquire, and that just all they'll do is explain how they come up with their rates. You don't get much input. Once you put the money in, you legally are not able to take it back out again.
But is there any value to us to fund less than as may be the required amount?
So what will happen if you attempt to do that is they will start garnishing your property taxes.
Oh, well, forget that.
Yeah, they have the ability to force you to pay on a monthly basis your percentage of covered payroll.
So then how come so many districts and governmental bodies are way behind? They're in essence borrowing from the retirement plans.
So from a municipal, an Imrf standpoint, most governments are well above 50% funded, and many of our clients are in the 90s. Where governments, local governmental units, local, not state, have gotten into trouble is the police and fire pension, where they taxed separately for it based on an independent actuary. Each fund hired its own actuary in the past, and the certain towns didn't contribute what the actuary told them to. There was no legal recourse other than the pension fund to sue the village or the city to request more funding, but that only chewed up attorney fees that gave the village or city less money to give to the pension fund. So also what happened at a few towns that the property tax levy, the portion that was listed as police and fire pension didn't always make it to the police and fire pension if the money was desperately needed in the general fund. So now, as of, I want to say 7 years ago or so, the amount that is levied for police and fire goes from the county directly to the pension funds. Doesn't go through the municipality anymore. So they are guaranteed to get every penny of the tax levy due to them now. However, there is still no legal requirement to levy the amount the actuaries are telling them to. So if you're a relatively poor town and don't have the ability to raise taxes to the point where you can put in 100% of the actuarial determined contribution, you don't.
Got it.
That's the problem right now.
Okay, I understand. Thank you. All right,
Mhm.
that was just a question that popped into my mind, given.
Yeah, it'd be nice to get some of that money back. Unfortunately, if the stock market has a hiccup and the measurement date is December 31, the value of the assets would drop potentially, and maybe you would be at 100% or 99% or something. It's all based on that value of assets, which are incidentally are smoothed over a 5-year period. They use a 5-year smoothing for their asset valuation.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that. That was the only question I had.
Okay. Thanks, Tony. And let just the record reflect that Commissioner Freeman, I see her now on my screen. Do you know what time, Jen, you know what time you popped in?
03, but I had to email to get the camera up and running, so I kind of was jumping in and out. Said
Okay,
I was.
So could just reflect in the minutes that Commissioner Freeman joined us at 4:03.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Commissioner Kaplan, questions, comments?
No questions, same comment. Dan, Marilyn, great job, both of you.
Okay, Commissioner Freeman?
No comments. Fantastic job. Thanks.
Yes, I agree. I mean, I'll admit I didn't have an opportunity to really go dive into this, so I'm sure I'll have more questions when you come back to the board with this. But getting back to the potential taxpayer lawsuits, do you see any concern with any of our funds that we'd be in danger of encouraging such an action?
Not really. I mean, the one that had more than 2 years worth of revenue expenditures and fund balance was the special rec, and that's already been spent down. So that's an easy thwart to any protest. The general fund has a little over a year's worth of expenditures. Well, I'm sorry, just under a year's worth of expenditures. So I don't really see that as a problem from a taxpayer standpoint. And the capital projects, you certainly have plans for all of that money going forward. So I don't really see it. That's not going to stop the railroad, for instance. That's the most common objector that I see among my clients because they own so much land that runs through town. So really see a need to drastically change anything.
Can someone please explain to Commissioner Freeman what I'm talking about? Because you probably do a much better job than I would do. I would probably stumble all over my words, but can you do like a 30-second or 1 minute
Sure.
Just summary of what we're talking about?
Absolutely. So there are some governments that hold on to way too much taxpayer funds and don't appear to have a plan to use them in the near future. So the protest might be entered by a taxpayer. Generally speaking, it's a very large taxpayer. The railroads are the most common protester, or if there's a developer in town that has a tremendously high tax bill, basically saying that you've overtaxed me, so I'm going to protest and demand that you reduce taxes in the future. The problem that governments run into is that taxes can only be increased by the lower of CPI or 5% on an annual basis. And if you are forced to reduce taxes in 1 year, the following year, you'd only be able to increase incrementally and you lose that ability to tax down the road. So it's important that you analyze your fund balances on an annual basis so that you can either point to the fund balance and say, yeah, but we have a plan, a 5-year capital plan to pare that down, or we have this or that reason for that amount. So generally speaking, those tax protests are not upheld if reasonable cause can be given to show what you're going to be using that money for.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, Dan, you did a much better job explaining than I could have ever done, so I appreciate that.
I probably
Okay,
explained
that's
it a
really
few more
it. I mean,
times.
I'll just reserve my other comments. Well, if I do have company, I'll reach out to Mary Lynn or to you, Dan, directly with them. So I appreciate it. Again, I echo my fellow commissioners' statements earlier with regard to the excellent job that our staff has done over the last year and a half dealing with extraordinary situations. Again, a round of applause to our staff.
Yay.
And we appreciate, and Dan, we appreciate your clean bill of health for our district.
Thank you. I just did want to mention very, very quickly, the board, the auditor's communication to the Board of Commissioners is very thin, and there's very little in there. That's the document I would explain to you if I had any issues with managements, if we had any problems or discussions that weren't resolved. We'd also put in our management letter comments of recommendations. Prior year management letter comments have all been implemented, and we only had one adjusting journal entry in this audit. So very, very nice job.
Oh, I have a question. Did you find anything with regard to, we always have a history of employees or other people not cashing our checks, and then we're carrying them from year to year. Has that issue been addressed?
I don't remember that being talked about. I remember, yeah, we did talk about that, didn't we?
We cleaned it up, Dan.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
How did we clean that up? Well, how do we address that?
Well, you would see them on the bank reconciliation if we had old outstanding checks that we hadn't either reissued or handed over to the state or fixed them somehow, alleviated them as reconciling items.
You know, a lot of the kids who work for the district, you know, when you issue checks, they somehow never made it to their bank accounts. But I think with the direct deposit actually probably helps a lot too.
Yeah, the other thing is, oftentimes I run into with park districts is refunds of canceled programs, or people move out of district and want money back, but they don't leave a forwarding address. So a lot of those checks go uncashed as well.
Okay. Okay. Anybody have any other questions or comments from other board members?
I have a question for Mary Lynn. It's not a question that Dan. We have unspent bond proceeds that we have to spend. Well, it was about $3 million.
Yeah, like 3.5.
3.5 million. All right. And the deadline to spend it is next year?
So the bulk of them, I believe, and Dan probably knows, I think like 80% by the end of this year.
I think 24 months from the date of issue. I believe it's either 75 or 80%.
But we're definitely spending those monies, and we just when you get the check run in the board packet, you're going to see some couple $100,000 expenditure. There's the money it's being spent.
Okay, just want to make sure that we're spending the money.
Well, we are. And we're tracking. We actually have it in a separate bank account, so we can really keep our eyes on it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dan. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And please call with any questions you have.
I definitely will. Okay. Next item on the agenda is the financial forecast and treasurer's report. Director Peters to present.
Okay. Let's see here. Okay. All right. So everyone, I assume, sees our financial forecast and treasurer's report. And this is as of April 30th. First, we'll start with our operations and our projected cash flows from operations. Just as a reminder, we have a board policy that says we have to keep 25% fund balance in reserve. So that's about $4.1 million for this year. And Dan Berg also did kind of allude to that in the presentation he just gave of our annual financial report. From our budget, we have budgeted at year end to have about $12 million of operating cash on hand. Right now, based on our actuals through April and our projections through the end of the year, we are looking to have about $14 million of operating cash on hand. And so we can see, whether it be the budgeted amount or our current projected amount, we will be far above the board policy for cash on hand for operations. What is fueling a good chunk of that anticipated cash on hand is how our results are looking for the year. If we look at our operating funds, we can see in the green that our actual revenues are exceeding our budgeted revenues. And at the same time, our actual expenses are significantly less than our budgeted expenses. That comes out to a tune of having about $1.6 million surplus more than what we had originally budgeted as of the end of April. And that amount is due to several items. We are a couple $100,000 below budget in payroll, which we'll look at more closely in a few minutes. We have Deer Creek just doing phenomenally. They are well at over $200,000 above where we anticipated them to be. Same with the golf course. Again, they're over $200,000 greater than where we had anticipated them to be. We also took in over $200,000 of property taxes, which Dan also alluded to in the audit. We received a couple $100,000 of tax revenues from 2020 in 2021, but after the allowable 60-day period, and so they will be reported in this year's income. So those are some of the reasons why this number looks so good. We also like to go down and compare ourselves to the average of the 3 pre-COVID years revenues and expenses. And even when we do that, we are actually beating the 3-year pre-COVID average by about $500,000 in operations. If we look at the funds a little bit more specifically, starting with the general fund, we can see that revenues in the general fund are above where we had budgeted them to be. Again, expenses are significantly below where we had budgeted them to be. That puts us to the positive about $500,000 more than where we thought we would be at the end of April. Last month, we were asked to show ourselves against just 2019 instead of the 3-year average. And so we did that. When we look at our 2019 actual revenue versus where we are this year, we are actually ahead of it. But keep in mind that in this fund, more than $100,000 of that is due to those extra property taxes that came through. On the expense side, we can see that our expenses are a couple $100,000 less than where they were in 2019. And we can say in the general fund, a good chunk of that is due to payroll. So at the end of the day, as far as comparing ourselves to 2019 as a standalone, we are to the positive of about $200,000. If we take those same sorts of things and look at the recreation fund, again, we can see that our revenues, our actual revenues, are greater than our budgeted revenues, and that our actual expenses are less than budgeted expenses. Also important to note is that our revenues are exceeding expenses in April, and that wasn't budgeted to happen until sometime in May. Again, that puts us at a $1 million better position than where we had budgeted to be as of the end of April. Again, things in there, tennis doing wonderfully, golf doing wonderfully. The extra property taxes don't hurt. The reduced payroll also contributes to this. Also requested last month was for us to again compare us to just 2019. So we went back and we did that. Same thing, we can see we are trailing 2019 in revenue, but we all know we had issues definitely back in January as we were partially closed or canceled due to COVID mitigation efforts. On the other side, but really correlating to things being closed, our expenses for this year are much less right now at the end of April than they actually were in 2019. Again, largely due to reduced programming, and of course, we do have unfilled positions that are affecting payroll expense. But anyway, when you look at this, we are doing better than we were in 2019 at the end of April, to the tune of about $260,000. If we look at the Special Recreation Fund, I would say it's really pretty much tracking the way we would anticipate, except for this little bit of revenue. This $21,000 here, which gets us this $19,000 surplus, is due again to the 2020 property taxes that hit in 2021. And we're going to say the same thing here in debt service. We're really trending exactly where we anticipated, except again, we had about $36,000 of taxes from 2020 come through. Next up is the capital fund. And as we have been talking about this year, we do have this OSLAD grant, the $200,000 OSLAD grant that came in. It sits in the deferred until we have expenses against it. So you can see that our expenses against it are increasing each month, and that difference in revenues budget versus actual should fix itself by the end of the year, just timing differences. On the expense side of things, where you can see this huge gap, and that gets us to being under budget in the capital fund. We had anticipated spending more money on capital by the end of April. There's timing differences with invoices coming in from vendors. There have been delays to some projects. Some projects are coming in under budget. So there's really a myriad of reasons why we look the way we do in the capital fund. If we look at our cumulative payroll, again, we were asked to add 2019 numbers into this, and so we did. When we look at this year's April 30th, we're almost at 2.1 million in payroll versus the budget of about 2.3 million in payroll. So we are under budget in payroll to the tune of about $234,000. Then we went back, we were asked to compare ourselves to 2019. And so we dropped 2019 in blue. And we can see again, our actual at the end of April is about 2.1 million. In 2019 is about 2.8 million. So under our 2019 payroll expense at the end of April, cumulatively $700,000. The important thing to point out here, though, is when you look down here, remember we get paid every other Friday. So there's 26 pay periods, which means 2 months a year have 3 payrolls. So back in 2019, March was one of those 2 months. So there is about $300,000 in here that don't make it quite apples to apples, because we know we will have 26 payrolls in 2021 as we did in 2019. So really I guess the difference between payroll in 2019 between 2021 is probably more like 400,000 versus 700,000, because we have this extra payroll in there. If we look at it on a month-to-month basis, we can see that in April we spent $551,000 on payroll versus the budget of $637,000. So we were $85,000 under budget in payroll from actual versus budget. And then when we drop in the blue the 2019 numbers, we can see that again we spent the $551,000 this April, and back in April of 2019 we spent $615,000 in April, and those are very comparable. They're 2 payrolls to 2 payrolls, and so we are less than that payroll to the tune of about $63,000. So in conclusion, we want to recall that in January of 2021, Park District programs and facilities were either partially closed or canceled due to COVID mitigation effects. Since then, the Park District was able to significantly adjust expenses, especially payroll, at roughly $234,000 below budget, resulting in $1.6 million surplus above the budgeted net revenue. Additionally, vaccines are steadily increasing, positivity rates and hospitalizations are decreasing. Illinois has entered the bridge phase, and we continue to see significant increases still in both our spring and summer registrations. Furthermore, when we compare our 2021 actuals to the 2017 through 2019 averages, we are over $500,000 greater than the pre-COVID bottom line for the same time period. Finally, For the period ending April 30th, 2021, tennis has a surplus of over $250,000 more than budgeted, and golf is at $221,000 more than where it had been budgeted to be. In fact, all of our cost centers at the district, except for 2, are operating in a surplus at the end of April. So all of this places the Park District in a very favorable financial position. Does anyone have any questions?
Before I turn it over to my fellow commissioners, what are the 2 that are not operating in the black?
Say that again?
What are the 2 cost areas that you just cited that you conveniently omitted to mention?
Oh, that's so anyway. So
you brought it up. You opened up the can of worms there, okay?
I know. Shame on me. No, actually, one of them is it's such a tease. So the bulk of this $250,000 here in tennis, we net the indoor and outdoor tennis. So outdoor tennis is below budget. I think like by $1,000 or something. So we net the 2 tennis facilities together to get to this. So outdoor tennis is one of those. And the other is athletics. And it is unfair to point out athletics only because they have been registering like gangbusters, but their money right now is sitting in the deferred. It will eventually pull over into the revenue stream. So that'll happen in May and June. And I anticipate that they will be doing just as well as the rest of our cost centers.
All right, thank you.
Well, yeah, I do have a question on that. So we're not really on a cash basis then for this. We're doing it on, well, you explain, because if we've got the money in the bank.
So we are modified accrual during the year, except for as Dan Berg was pointing out, at year end, we do have to go to a full hard accrual. So what we do here, we try to accrue things. When I show you that cash flow schedule, that's why, when you see that we're up almost $2 million in operating cash, it doesn't really tie to our 1.6 million additional surplus, because we adjust things as we know them. Sort of like the property taxes that came in. We knew they had come in when we did this presentation in March. So I put those into cash flows for us because I knew it was cash in the bank, but we don't accrue between months. We only do a full accrual at year end. We put things in deferreds until programs start. We don't recognize revenue as soon as people pay us because they may cancel and we may owe them a refund. So we don't want to be putting that into revenue and then having to back that out of our revenues. We'd rather it sit in deferred, sit on the balance sheet until we actually start that program, and then we start pulling the money over into the income statement.
So is there any of the charts that you showed to us that would show that we have another $300,000 in the bank from athletics?
No, because that would be on the balance sheet, and we really don't look at, the only thing that would be close that somewhat analyzes our balance sheet is the cash flow statement, because the cash is sitting there, but that's in there further out.
Okay, but you cover it by telling us that sitting in the bank is another X $1,000.
Right, yes.
Okay.
Anything else, President Rodenberg?
No, Commissioner Kaplan.
Okay, thank you.
No, I'm sorry. They did it again.
It's all right. I've been called much worse, trust me.
I did it again.
Kaplan?
My only question is about camps. I assume camps is not in this yet.
Right, and you can really see when camps hit in June. Camps will hit in June. So that's why we we're talking about these increased registrations, and we know that we have more registrations. Again, that's sitting in the deferred, and it won't actually pull over until June.
How are we looking with camps?
I would say well, but I may defer to either Executive Director Romes or someone else that may be able to speak.
I understand we'll be full camps, but what percentage are we full compared to the last year we were open pre-COVID?
Yeah, so our capacities are lower. So but even still, we are pretty close to pre-COVID numbers, even with those capacities. Mitch, I don't know if you have the more detailed numbers, we certainly can get back to you on that, Brian. It's in our weekly.
No, I don't need it. I was just curious.
Yeah,
We'll
but-
get it in another meeting or two.
Yeah.
in June.
Busing is a little
I
bit different.
froze. I froze. Okay. Okay.
One other
I missed
thing,
that. I froze. I don't know what, I didn't hear what you said.
Yeah, I froze also.
You said you're buying us all dinner after the meeting.
Okay. Thanks. I don't care about dinner. I just want drinks. So,
Drinks on you.
yeah.
Camp is
Okay.
doing well.
All right. Thanks.
Another thing I'll just note that you will see in your board packets in the treasurer's report that Mary Lynn has added is you can see these graphs by cost, by center in recreation. So it does, to your question, which funds are or are not operating above surplus. You can see them by center in the recreation fund. So that details in your treasurer's report.
Okay.
Well,
Go
yeah, I
ahead.
would like to, could we go back? Could we possibly get a chart, a graph, whatever you, we call these things, that will show how much we have deferred? Because I think every time we talk about this, we hear about the deferred, it's not in there, like the taxes were for, we anticipate, but then we suddenly get it. So if we've collected another $400,000 that will obviously be filtered in, it is, I think, critical to say, and there's $400,000 of revenue, of cash that we've collected for programs, whatever it is. So I don't know how we want to cover it, but I think it's a point that we should understand.
So if I can, so two things. So one, the deferreds are in essence in the cash flows in future months. Because again, they're balance sheet items. The only thing I would say, and we could certainly do it, if we start focusing on what is sitting in deferreds, and of course it was the worst ever when the pandemic hit because everything sitting in the deferreds had to be refunded. So you would never, the reason they're in a deferred and not in your revenue is because you're really not supposed to count on it, until the program starts and that person, starts the program, and that they're, not asking for a refund. But we could show deferred balances each month.
Oh, well, why don't we do it on that summary you do at the very end? Just, indicate recreation deferred 200,000. Just give us like a gross breakdown there.
Okay.
As opposed to trying to fit it into one of these graphics.
Okay.
I think that would answer some of the questions that we've been asking.
I think it's less of a true financial exercise and more of like a health of programming revenue, just sort of like looking a little further down the pike than waiting another month or two for those to hit.
Okay.
So I get that it doesn't fit in like traditional revenue recognition, but it's just more of like a little heads up, like, hey, we're kind of tracking low here, or, or high, or whatever the case may be.
Okay.
Other than that, great.
Dan, do you have anything else, Commissioner Freeman? Questions,
Nope.
Kyla?
Nope, that was it. Those were
Okay.
the two.
My only comment, again, thanks for all the hard work to create this, is that I'm thinking, we've been doing this monthly at a monthly basis since COVID hit. We should probably, I guess we'll discuss with Director Rome's, maybe in the third, maybe even the fourth quarter, stop doing this monthly, just do it quarterly, just to take the pressure off our staff a little bit, because I'm sure it takes you a lot of time to do this. But once we open things up and we get back to some semblance of order of normal, I think maybe we can scale back this reporting. Unless anybody else on the finance committee disagrees with me, I think it takes a lot of effort to put this together on a monthly basis to present this to us. Anybody else have any comments about that? Hearing none.
Sounds good to me.
Barney, Barney, you okay with that?
No, I think quarterly is fine.
Okay, Jen, you okay with that?
Yeah, less work, busy work, the better.
Okay, let's kind of shoot towards maybe sometime in the third quarter to start doing this on a quarterly basis. Let's take it, hopefully we'll be opening up in July or June or July, and then we'll have a couple months of under our belts of seeing how normal things look like and what normal looks like again. And then maybe we start doing this quarterly instead of monthly.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else on the financial forecast or treasurer's report? Okay. Next item on the agenda is the 2020 budget calendar timeline. Haven't we done this already?
No, but I mean.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Maybe I'm wrong.
You're wrong. You're wrong in this one.
I'm always wrong. I just, it's often. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Hold on. I'm sorry. This was not loaded. Oh. I'm sorry.
You don't have to show us. You could just tell us.
Oh, well, oh, really? No, you know what? I'm so sorry. It was loaded. I'm not sure what happened to it. It'll take like 30 seconds to pull this up. Here it is.
Isn't the bottom line that you want to move everything up a month?
No. Okay.
That's what you told me, that Rome's.
Is that what he told you? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually true. That's actually true. But let her go.
Well, versus last year. Okay,
Right.
so hopefully you can see this. I'm really sorry about that. So as we were just saying, so pre-COVID, we used to file our budget by the end of the calendar year. During COVID, so last year when we did our 2021 budget, we filed it 2 months later in February. And legally, we have until March 31st to file it every year. And by filing it later last year, it did a couple of things. One, your projections are more complete because you've waited an extra month or two to see where things are at. So generally, your projections help you create your budget for next year. Of course, during the COVID, that was just tough all the way around, but we just needed the time to see where the pandemic was going to be at. I would say for 2022, there is still some uncertainty. Hopefully we're kind of done and we're just going to keep going forward with things and there will be no turning back or going back to phase 4, phase 3. Not 100% sure. So what we are proposing for fiscal year 2022 is kind of going in between. We're going to add a month on to what we normally did pre-COVID, but shorten it up by a month based on what we did during the COVID. And so what we would propose is that staff starts on June 3rd, which would then get the Finance Committee their first look at the capital budget on September 23rd. It would give the Finance Committee their second look at the capital budget October 21st, as well as reviewing the tax levy and resolution. And then capital would get presented to the board, the whole board, on October 26th. In November, we would do the taxes, and at that point, the budget would be presented. The overall budget would get presented to the Finance Committee in November, and then we would bring revisions back to the budget in December, while still passing the tax levy ordinance. At the December board meeting, we would also take the budget to the board in December. We'd file the taxes, publish our public hearing, have our public hearing at the January board meeting, and file at the end of January. So again, that's still 2 months out because the due date isn't until March 31st. If something were to happen, we still have February to finish and even March, which we didn't show on here. And I can't imagine that we would not finish by the end of January unless, again, something went awry with the pandemic. But that's what we're proposing. And I just wanted to open up to any questions or concerns about our budget schedule.
Let me begin. I mean, we, as a district, we used to do it in this manner. And then our former president, Scott Myers, advocated doing the budget at the same time we do the tax levy, approve the budget at the same time. So can you explain what the benefits of doing it, way we changed to do it, or is this the better way of doing it? So we're basically going back to the future, so to speak.
In my mind, again, it is, to me, it is always better, as much data as we can have before we have to put the budget together. I think the better we are, which means being able to start on it later and seeing where things are both financially, but also with the pandemic, where are things. It helps us to reassess, how did this program do or that program do? Doing with this timeline, all of our summer camps will be over by the time we start budgeting for next year. Another huge component into this, but not really spelled out, is the payroll part, especially all of the summer help. And so, you know, again, the more programming we have completed or under our belt, the easier it is to kind of predict what we feel things will look like next year. You know, as far as doing the taxes and the budget at the same time, it is tougher because we have a pretty small business department here. I'll just say that. But going into the budget, if you look at the budget being presented to the full board in December, it's really side by side with the taxes. So the taxes are being passed, and now I can have solid taxes in the budget. And then we just come back the following month to approve the budget. So it's just, we do taxes December and the final budget in January. They're back to back instead of simultaneous.
Okay. All right. Let's go around the horn. I don't see him on my screen, but is Commissioner Kaplan still here?
I'm still here.
There you are.
No comments. I'm okay with all those.
Okay. President Ruttenberg,
I think it's fine.
Commissioner Freeman.
Makes sense to me.
Okay, let's rock and roll. All right.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the Sunset Woods Playground renovation update. Manager Schwartz to present.
We're all set. Drive safe.
Okay. Malia, is that you? Malia, I think you're muted.
All
There you
right, now can you hear me?
Awesome.
All
Okay.
right, hang on a second. Let me share my screen. Oh, only it won't let me. Hold on a second. There we go. All right, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
All
Yes,
right.
we can.
So I'm here this afternoon to present or provide an update on the Sunset Woods Park Playground renovation project. We are wrapping up design development and we are getting started our next phase of construction documents. And so at this point, we're really finalizing the design and we're getting real pricing. And so this is the point when we want to come back to the board and provide that update. And so I'm here to share that overall the project is coming in, it's progressing well, but it's coming in a little over budget. And so we understand that Sunset Woods is the community's downtown park. It's our signature playground. And this is the opportunity, the comments we're hearing, this is the opportunity to make those necessary improvements. So considering that sentiment, but also trying to stay within budget, we're already working with Hitchcock to value engineer this project and adjust the design and strategize on bidding so that we can stay closer to the budget while still producing a playground that is meeting expectations. So today I'm going to provide that update on the budget and I'm going to highlight the elements where we're coming in a little bit over budget. So like I said, we're speeding along. We're trying to keep to this construction schedule. So these cost estimates are hot off the press as of this morning. The prices here on the left are the cost estimates that were shared in February. These were the cost estimates that were developed based on the schematic design stage. So that was kind of culminating that concept planning phase. The cost estimates on the right are the cost estimates at the end that I got today. So end of 100% design development, slightly updated as we continue to move along. I guess to give that difference, each stage is increasingly more detailed. So as we get into construction documents, we're uncovering costs or possible cost saving opportunities. Additionally, at this stage, Hitchcock is calling contractors with these plans, and we're able to get more precise pricing. So just to give you kind of that context of the progression of these cost estimates. So back in February, we're coming in for site construction at 450,000. Today, we're coming in at 595,000. So that's an increase of 145,000. I'm going to share why that is. Play equipment in February, we're coming in at 400,000, and now we're coming in at 429,000. It's an increase of almost 30,000. Testing and soil analysis, we budgeted 20,000. We're coming in under 12.5. Professional services, originally were budgeted at 130,000, coming in at 122,000. That was the contract that was approved with Hitchcock back in February. And then we were holding an $150,000 contingency that had design contingency, bidding contingency, and construction contingency. And now we're, as we move along in design, that design contingency is getting lower. So, but we're still holding 3% in design contingency. We're holding the bid contingency and construction. So some of these dollars, again, are just our placeholders for contingency. So overall, we had a $1.15 million budget. We're coming in about $116,000 over budget. And then I'll share that we're also comparing to what is earmarked in or budgeted in the 2021 capital plan, which is $1.1 million to be spent in 2021. So we always knew we were over $50,000. Now it's coming in at $166,000. So I'm going to highlight the areas that are causing this overage. So we made some design choices that are adding some more fencing, and metal prices are coming in higher right now. So originally, this is the concept plan that you saw back in February, and we had reduced the footprint of the play area. This yellow line right here is showing where the fence is now. As we've progressed through design to add play value, that kind of unprescribed play value running through the fields, and a lot of we've heard that fence is valued so that there's a contained play area, particularly for the 2 to 5 age group, that keeping the existing boundary is important. And then this area would be a grassed open space area that is contained for that age group. So by adding in that fencing, we're adding in some additional cost. Pour in place servicing, we always knew that this was going to be an opportunity of where we can where we might need to adjust as prices come in. And so right now the prices are to surface the entire, the majority of the play area with soft surfacing, with the pour in place surfacing. It's that rubber surfacing. When they had done the schematic design estimates, they were being more realistic. So this like bluer shade right here is pour in place, and all these, it's like a translucent gray, is representing the engineered wood fiber. So the cost estimates, again, that I'm showing right now are considering the majority of the play space being pour in place. So we're already working with Hitchcock to consider how we might alter these pour in place designs to add in maybe a little bit more engineered wood fiber to remain closer to budget. And we can always include the when we bid out, we can bid these elements as alternates. So if the bidding does come in within budget, we can still make that decision at that point. We're also adding more concrete than had been originally budgeted in the schematic design phase, which had been assuming more asphalt, which is what's there right now. The decision to add concrete is to contribute to the space, defining this space as a signature play area. So by using the concrete, it's really defining this area as our signature play space. And we're also adding some additional paths to improve connectivity between the play areas. This configuration is showing the new path system along with the new grass area. So those are the main buckets that are contributing to the overage in budget. There are some smaller additional hundreds of dollars here and there that are also contributing, but these are the main items to highlight. I'm going to move on to some other additional components of the playground, but are there any questions about the budget, the base budget that I've just reviewed?
Okay, anybody have any questions? Okay, hearing none. Let's go ahead, Molly. Keep going.
All right. So as part of our contract with Hitchcock, we had requested that they consider or begin the design process for one of the components in the master plan, which was the gathering area or the plaza in between the two play areas. So as we had always considered that to be bid as an alternate. So I want to share where that's coming in. And so I'm lingering here because I want to show the difference of what this is going to look like. So the iteration that is on the screen right now is the base bid. So that's improving connectivity between the paths without plaza. So there's minor changes here, and this was following feedback that we heard from board and community, maintaining green space, not overly building this park. So putting in a small pervious paved patio or plaza in the center of that circular connection area. And so that's coming in at $39,000. So the ad for that plaza would be $39,000, and that includes the all the construction and contingency kind of related to that piece.
Molly, are these extras right now, or is this part of what the existing plan is with the existing overage?
This is an extra.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks.
So let me ask a question as we go along. This plaza, which I take it those are tables and benches or something in there.
Yeah.
What's the purpose of this?
Yeah. So the purpose of this is to create a space. So we're creating a quality or a type of experience here at our park where people, there are 3 signature play areas here. People come here to spend the day. There's restrooms. So this is an opportunity for families to come with their kids, enjoy the park, have a place to sit while kids are playing. Some of the feedback that we heard while talking with residents out at the park during our engagement effort was, I have one kid here, and so a central hub where parents can kind of hang out while the kids are out and about playing, a central place to come back to. This is something you'll see at a lot of other downtown parks, kind of like a place to sit, kind of like a central place. So it's creating that. I would say it's contributing to the experience and defining it as a space, as a play area.
I can accept all that, but my question and concern would be, as a parent, where's the fence that's going to enclose the area that the kids are going to be playing in? So am I situated within the area so I could have my 5-year-old go one way and my 8-year-old go the other way and not think that they're going to be wandering off? We're not enclosing the whole area within a fence, are we?
That's right. No, we're not. The only enclosed space is the 2 to 5 play area.
See, I am, maybe I'm just old fashioned, but if I had kids in some other area, I wouldn't be lollygagging in a central seating area. I'd be hawking the park the whole time.
Can I pipe in here for a second? So I did meet with them with Hitchcock and I walked this area. They're drawn together a little bit more than how they are currently. So right now the problem I've always had is I lost a kid in that bubble thing by the rocket ship, and then I've got another one, the little one's taking off for the one farther up the hill, and you can't catch them once they get in it. So you want them in a fenced area. So the 2 to 5 is great. So you can put them in there. You're actually sitting pretty close to that and you can see everything else from that spot. So it actually solves a big problem that the park already had where you couldn't see what was going on. And if someone took off, you couldn't, especially the littler one, couldn't get them. So I liked this a lot. I don't like stationary tables and chairs, and I'm not married to the wall. I kind of went back and forth, Amalia, on this. I think if it costs too much money, I'm cool with just that hub there, and maybe we put some tables and chairs and figure it out. But I think this is actually pretty important.
All right, I guess the problem is I don't know the scale and the distance, because as I said, if I'm sitting there, which I wouldn't do, but if I was sitting there, I'd certainly want to be able to be close enough to go in either direction and respond to what might be going on. And again, I don't know the scale.
It's really hard looking at these designs to kind of get the full feel of it. Walking, it's better, but it still will come together even better than it is now currently. So it's not that far.
Okay.
And maybe I put a little too much emphasis on one kid going to the 2 to 5 and one kid going to the 5 to 12. I get what you're saying, Barney. I think that this also just contributes to that ability, that sense of space and spending the day there, a place to gather. If your kids are, especially if they're at the 5 to 12, the rocket ship play area or the treehouse adventure play area, where you might have a little bit older kids that can kind of spread out a little bit, have a little bit longer leash. This does provide that kind of like central hub to really define it as a space.
Okay, I can accept that. I understand this. Again, as I said, it looks to me, if we just took a scale that, the distances are not conducive to keep an eagle eye on the kids. That's all.
Yeah.
Amalia, do we have any renderings besides these? Basically, this looks like a site plan.
Cal, you're right ahead of me. I'm going to switch to the next slide here. So we have it budgeted to do renderings. And so that's a cost that we're interested in getting some feedback on, whether it's something the board would like to see. So it's already built into that $122,000 that I already showed as soft costs. It's coming in at $5,600. And we always, or when we presented originally, we called it out as like a menu item. And so we always talked about it as something we may or may not do. And so here I'm showing examples of what those renderings might do. So we'll have 3D images of our play equipment, but it won't be integrated into anything. So it'll just be pictures of what the play equipment will look like. What the renderings will do, this additional $5,600, is really give that sense of the layout, give you that sense of space, and how the play equipment fits into the changes to the site. It is a cost though. So our intent would be, Hitchcock needs some time to do these, but the intent would be to if we were to want to proceed with renderings, that they would be useful as we proceed with finalizing design and sharing with the community the final what the final product will look like.
Anybody have any questions or comments about that?
Go ahead, Jen.
Let's go ahead, Jen, go first.
It's just really hard when you're on site to envision how this is going to look. And $5,000 isn't as much to spend as like, oh, but if we put a retaining wall here, it's $20,000. Like there's some bigger ticket decisions that need to be made that could be solved or even dismissed with a rendering and I could, we could feel good about saying like, yes, this is enough. We don't need to spend more on X, Y, or Z, or we do. So the struggle with the site plans and just some top down renderings, I think, or, visuals, I would like 3D renderings just to get the look and feel. I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but if we're going to go over budget, we better have a pretty good reason why we're doing it.
Well, without the renderings, my view of the seating area is $39,000 that we could better spend somewhere else. So I would like to spend the $5,000 to get renderings. And I know, and I'll remind everybody that we did renderings for Rosewood Beach and the buildings that we put in there. And I think the renderings could, for something like this, for the $1.5 million we're going to spend, becomes critical, because otherwise, looking at that overhead layout to see we've got a circle here and a circle here and a circle here, and somewhere there's a fence, just leaves me cold. I mean, there's nothing I have seen that I could say I like. So I think the renderings are essential for this.
Brian, do you have anything?
No brainer.
I agree. However, with two caveats. Number one, I find it surprising it's going to cost $5,000 to do renderings, where in 2021 software is a lot different than 2015 software. And I question that it's going to cost them that much to create those renderings when what people do with software right now is incredible, but it is what it is. If that's what they're charging, that's what they're charging. The second thing is with regard to, you mentioned earlier, Amalia, that this is similar to having the centralized seating or gathering area, similar to what happens in city parks and other places. If you can pull up examples of how this in other parks, how this central area has been integrated into, or integrates separate play areas into one, like a hub and spoke type of system, that would be very helpful, because that would actually put some context to what we're looking to do here.
Sure.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Okay. Anything else, Amalia?
No, that's all I have.
Well, I do have, can I ask a question? Jen, you were at the site visit.
Mm-hmm.
And could you give us some comments from your site visit and your conversations?
Yeah, and there's some context here in that I have taken 3 kids of different ages to this park, and then saw a bunch of friends there when I was there the other day, and we're still all doing the same thing, and the clunky aspects of it still remain, right, that are a little bit outdated. I thought Hitchcock did a great job of, they're really trying to hold to the budget, but there are some things like when you're taking out asphalt from 80% of a play area, and to stay on budget, you're going to leave a few $100s worth of asphalt behind. Like, there's a few things that we need to keep an eye on to make sure this is cohesive. Like, this is a big deal, right? Sunset's a signature park and a play area that's used by everybody. So I just, that was my first really looking at the plans, really digging in, and then being on site to kind of see how it'll be laid out. I think it's a tremendous project. And I feel very positive about some of the things that I saw, but there's more to be done here. One thing I'm concerned about is the timeline a little bit. To get this up and running, we need to, sort of break ground or start construction is really pretty soon. So everything we do to delay that is, this could be pushed till spring if we can't get it all together in the next couple of meetings. So that's the concern I have. And I also don't like being rushed. So.
Well, no, I agree with, I don't want to be rushed on this either. And if we miss the construction for this season, well, it'll be there next year. I'd rather do it right.
I know, Director Romes, I know that there's a vacancy with regard to a board member to be involved with the working group. Now that Commissioner Flores Weisskopf is no longer on the board, And I know that Barney, you're the one, I guess, does the assignments.
Oh, we've already taken care of it, Cal.
Oh, is Jen doing it? I love
Yeah.
it. That was gonna be my suggestion right then and there.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So your portfolio is just increased. So
A
congratulations.
couple of things on my plate. Sounds good.
Okay.
No, I
All
love
right,
it though. Good project.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. Thanks, Amalia. Anybody else
you.
have any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none. Next item on the agenda is the Golf Learning Center parking lot project update. Director Smith to present.
And I'll just intervene, but I believe there was a request to defer this item unless you want us to continue.
No, I mean, it's my whole thing at being on that call with the rest of the Golf Advisory Committee that we defer this discussion until we hear back from our consultants on what they're suggesting or suggesting for renovations for that area.
Right, so we're working with the consultant at the Golf Learning Center on a site optimization plan, which is looking at the operations and the services in effort to maximize usage and revenues. And so that project is not complete yet. So to your point, Cal, was to let's hold off on the parking lot until we have that site optimization report. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so in the vernacular, we're going to table this item until future meeting, until after we hear the.
I move to table this item.
There you go. And we're not even going to vote on it. I'm doing it. I'm being a tyrant now. I'm saying we're tabling this item until to another meeting, a future meeting after we hear back from the consultant.
Right, and so what that essentially will do then is the parking lot and the marquee sign will move likely to 2022 as well.
That's fine. Okay, next item on the agenda is other business. Director Peters to present.
Okay, all I have is our currently planned 2 finance committee meetings in June, one on June 3rd and one on June 17th at 4 p.m.
I won't be at that meeting.
There were 2 she mentioned. Which one?
The June 17th meeting I won't be at.
Okay.
So why don't we,
I'm doing a golf trip. That's my golf trip.
why don't we defer that meeting to another date then?
Let's just do that in July. Unless you need to meet it, unless you need it before the regular meeting. It's up to you, Marilyn. Or you guys can go on without me.
No. You're essential.
Oh,
Why don't we make a recommendation after the meeting, because that might be an important meeting before we go to bid for Sunset Woods. So we can get back to you on a rescheduled date.
yeah, I'm going to be out of town the 16th through the 18th. My first trip since COVID.
I was gonna say we're leaving town. Oh my gosh.
Enjoy.
Well, I'm going to Kohler.
Woohoo.
Great, yeah. Okay. Anything else? Anybody else have anything they want to add or to the agenda or anything?
No.
Anything else they want to discuss? Hearing nothing.
Oh, I do have, whoa, hold it. I'm sorry.
Just when you thought we were out, they bring us back in.
I'll bring this up to the finance committee, but obviously we're going to, and Brian Romes and I have talked about this, and in the past we talked about the possibility of a construction superintendent. And the fact that we're relying upon contractors now to, estimate pricing, and we don't have anybody, and no slurs on anybody on staff who's a real construction person. And in the past, we had talked about getting somebody to be a full-time construction superintendent, I suppose.
Like an in-house GC so they can sub work?
In-house construction manager, so that when we might not have to have the contractor adding the 20% that they do all the time.
100%. All I could think about at the park the other day was how much less expensive this might be if we had such a role.
And I will say, we're going to be doing Westridge. We're going to be doing the ice rink. There's a lot of projects that a person of that ilk would be beneficial to us. Brian Romes, do you want to add to that, or am I just hung out there? And
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think you said everything. I mean, we're
Well, can you please turn the, oops, sorry.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, I think you said everything for our conversation. We think there will be some financial savings if we do these things in-house. Of course, there'll be the cost of that person, but it would be somebody that we trust and are familiar with. And I think there would be some benefits to considering that. So I know Jeff and his team are looking at that possibility right now, and we can certainly come back with a recommendation for your consideration.
I just want to note that in discussing hiring a construction director, that our executive director mentioned that we're hitting the nail on the head. So I appreciate the being consistent. Okay. Okay. Anything? I thought that was funny. I'm sorry. But
No. That was.
I don't know if anybody else noticed, but he did say nail on the head.
Should we go around the room and everybody come up with something and saying, look, I want to
I
be
don't
on
even,
the.
yeah, I feel like I don't even fit in here yet because I can't throw in a ridiculous metaphor. Damn
Look,
it.
I want to level with you guys about this.
All right. So we're going to build this one brick at a time. Okay. So
I saw that coming.
yeah. Okay. So anything else? Let's
Yes, there is. Jen, we're going to wait for you to come up with something.
Okay.
I can't.
Okay.
I've been back to back all day.
Okay. So I'm going to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. There's a motion by President Ruttenberg, second by Commissioner Freeman. All in favor, say aye.
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 And this meeting's adjourned at 5:00.